Hey players, so I recently went to my locals and I played some real in-person games for a change. We're kind of getting back into the swing of things and it was really nice to see everyone again. I had a few decks I wanted to test out and play games with and I did just that. It was really satisfying. Now, most of the decks I tested played pretty much exactly how I thought they would. This was especially true of the Orc enemy faction deck for Slime. I tested a game with the pure Orc deck against another pure Orc deck piloted by the same friend I opened the Slime boxes with. I was just going to post up the game and let you players at home decide what you thought of how it played, but my camera angle kind of sucked and there was a lot of background noise, so instead I'm going to just give some thoughts on it while I play the footage I have. Look, generally Wish 4s isn't a game that suffers from extreme balance issues. If you put the components together that kind of fit into the same deck, it'll work most of the time, and you can still have a great time playing whatever you decide to brew. Even older sets like Overlord, even though they're not as consistent and lack some of the more modern comforts, are still fun to play and somewhat competitive, like my Overlord standby deck that I played in the tournament. But let me tell you something, that is not the case with the Orc enemy faction deck. This deck is hot ass. Generally, I can find something nice to say about any deck in Weiss and give a few reasons why you might want to try it out, but this just isn't going to happen for the Orc deck. I mean, it costs literally nothing to build. You can order the cards online for like $10, so you might think, well, why not just give it a shot? Well, don't. This deck is garbage. Now, I want to clarify something. When Slime came out, the Orc deck wasn't even on my radar of things I was looking forward to about it. I just thought it was cool that you could make a deck with the Orcs. They are the show's enemy faction, aren't they? I just thought it was cool you could make it. I don't think every enemy faction deck that's in a set needs to be at least a B tier or above, but one thing I do think is they should at least be fun to play, and the Orc deck is not fun to play. Against any real deck with real combos and engines, the Orc deck is a dumpster fire. Am I mad that it isn't good? No, not at all. I didn't say it had to be good, but I am mad that like no effort seems to be put into it. I mean, the deck literally has 6 cards. It has a generic level 0 that gets power for each other Orc and can't side, a generic level 1 with the same profile, and a single level 3 with a pretty lackluster toolkit, a single level 2 that's just a backup, and 2 level 0 techs that deal exclusively with Orcs. The level 0 Orc that sits in the center stage is base 2500 and gets plus 1k for each other Orc in the center. The level 1 Orc is base 3k and gets plus 1500 for each other Orc in the center. Now, these Orcs do have to be the generic Orcs. They don't get boosted for the other level 0s, level 2 or level 3. So taking these, this is already bad. First off, these are smaller than the other enemy faction cards like the Titans that work the same way. And what's more, all of those other cards can side attack. These can't, and they're so tiny that the only unique thing about the card, the fact that they get bigger for seeing more Orcs, is pretty much pointless. Now, the level 1 Orc has a soul trigger, which makes it pretty much the only 1-0 in English to add a soul to an attack, and that's kind of interesting, but you can't side with pretty much anything you attack with. So a lot of the good things about playing high soul trigger dense decks go out the window. The only thing you can really do with it is shove 4 plus 2 soul climaxes in the deck and soul rush, and that hasn't been good since 2015. And guess what? Until you hit level 3 or sometimes 2 if you can get the change mechanic to work, this is all you're fielding against your opponent. You'd hardly be worse off for just playing vanilla bodies, but surely there's some tech to go with the fact that this is an Orc deck. And yes, there are 2 back rows. You have a Geld and a Gelmud, and pretty much every game you're going to want one of each on your stage to sit there for pretty much the whole game. The Geld rests itself in top checks, and then you add the top card under it as a marker. You can also eat the Gelmud for a marker and stand it again and then get a stock. When it has 4 markers, it can't stand. But if you're level 2 and it has 4 markers, you can throw it away to play the level 3 Orc Disaster from your hand. Now, what's bad about this is if you hit a climax, you can't do shit about it. Sure, you can play over it, but it feels so bad because who the hell even knows if you'll see another one? And you don't need to play it and get the change ability off, but it's like the only thing the deck does. And then there's the Gelmud. You can give an Orc power at the start of each climax phase, and you can pay 2, pitch an Orc, and rest him to salvage an Orc, and then salvage another Orc with the same name as the one you salvaged. So it's a pay 2, pitch 1 to plus 1. That's pretty awful. But half the time, you can't even plus 1 if you're not looking for a generic Orc target because another target of the same 4 of card might not be in your waiting room, and he's your only way to find stuff that isn't just drawing into it. No brainstormers, no searches, no top checking, no nothing. Just this shitty Gelmud. And then there's the deck's only level 2 card, which is just a 2500 backup, which you can pay an extra 1 stock for and salvage another backup with the same name when you use it. Now, that's kind of interesting, but in this deck, this is anything but useful. At level 1, you can't even play it, and at level 2, what's 2500 gonna do for your 6k Orcs? Fat shit, that's what. So why bother? Literally the only other card is this level 3 Orc Disaster. When he comes in, you mill the top 2 and deal X damage where X is soul triggers. Now considering that over half the deck is triggers, that's actually not bad, but that's pretty much all he does. His combo is that when the shot climax is placed, you bounce a character and you get a free stock, and you can encore him by offing an Orc from your stage. But what does that even do? What do you spend the stock on? Why bounce a character in this case? It doesn't do anything. And that's the whole deck. 6 cards and they don't do jack diddly shit. There is no compelling reason to build this deck. And it didn't have to be this way. There are so many bad, rare, and uncommon slots, even in yellow alone in Slime. Why couldn't some of them be orcs? Like an orc event that grabs certain orcs, or God forbid a brainstormer. Why not a second combo? Or why couldn't the other orc cards, just the generic you can run any amount of this card in your deck, be better? Now sure, you can take the approach of adding non-faction tech like some players do for enemy faction decks, and sure, sometimes that's good. Like, what if we added an Ellen Brainstormer, or the level 0 Searching Rimuru? Well, the problem is they gunk up the deck too much. You want the Geld and the Gelmood in your back row, and all the orcs get power from other orcs, so you're actively penalized for playing non-orc cards. And sure, you could add in the Rimuru naming combo or the Xion combo at level 1, but what would it do? It would make your orcs smaller, that's what. So at that point, why even play orcs at all? You could just add the Xion early play, or the King Gozel Tech Bouncer, but at that point, why not just ditch the level 3 orc disaster? I'm not happy about this. It's such a waste, like the Axis Cult enemy faction deck that came in Konosuba 2. It wouldn't have been that hard to give them like 2 more cards and make the deck at least a little interesting to play. So Bushi, if you're watching this, you really dropped the ball on this one. I'm sorry. 1 out of 10 would never play again. The only thing this deck is good for is using it to boost the number when you tell people how many Weiss decks you have. By the way, I have almost 70 decks. Not that it matters. Anyway, sorry I got pretty negative about this, but not all decks are winners. If you want to see what a good enemy faction deck looks like, be on the lookout for my blue deck tech of Sylvia Kazuma from Legend of Crimson. I've already ordered the cards, so I can't wait to try it out. And as always, thanks for watching. Peace.